Since the 1960s, the issue of use of Native American and First Nations names for sports teams or mascots has been the subject of increasing public controversy in the United States and Canada. This has been a period of rising indigenous civil rights movements, and Native Americans and their supporters object to the use of images and names they consider derogatory. They have conducted numerous protests and tried to educate the public on this issue. In response, since the 1970s, an increasing number of secondary schools have retired such Native American names and mascots. Changes accelerated in 2020, following public actions related to issues of institutional racism and nationally covered cases of police misconduct. National attention has been focused on the prominent use of names and images by professional franchises including the Washington football team. Says some 1,900 schools in 1,025 school districts still have caricature tribal mascots. The issue has often been reported in the media only in terms of Native American individuals being affected by the offensiveness of certain terms, images, and performances. This reduces the problem to one of feelings and personal opinions. It prevents a more comprehensive understanding of the history and context of the use of Native American names and images, and the reasons why sports teams should eliminate such practices. Social science research has shown that sports mascots and images are important symbols with deeper psychological and social effects in society. A 2020 analysis of this research indicates only negative effects, though psychologically detrimental to Native American students and to non-Native persons by promoting negative stereotypes and prejudicial ideas of Native Americans and undermining intergroup relations. Based on such research showing negative effects, more than 115 professional organizations representing civil rights, educational, athletic, and scientific experts have adopted resolutions stating that such use of Native American names and/or symbols by non-Native sports teams is a form of ethnic stereotyping. It promotes misunderstanding and prejudice that contributes to other problems faced by Native Americans. Defenders of mascots often state their intention to honor Native Americans by referring to positive traits, such as fighting spirit and being strong, brave, stoic, dedicated, and proud, while opponents see these traits as being based upon stereotypes of Native Americans as savages. In general, the social sciences recognize that all stereotypes, whether positive or negative, are harmful because they promote false or misleading associations between a group and an attribute, fostering a disrespectful relationship. The injustice of such stereotypes is recognized with regard to other racial or ethnic groups. Thus, mascots are morally questionable regardless of offense being taken by individuals. Defenders of the status quo also state that the issue is not important, being only about sports, and that the opposition is nothing more than political correctness, which change advocates argue ignores the extensive evidence of harmful effects of stereotypes and bias. The NCAI and over 1,500 national Native organizations and advocates have called for a ban on all Native imagery, names, and other appropriation of Native culture in sports. The joint letter included over 100 Native-led organizations, as well as tribal leaders and members of over 150 federally recognized tribes, reflecting their consensus that Native mascots are harmful. Use of such imagery and terms has declined, but at all levels of American and Canadian sports it remains fairly common. Former Representative Babe Haaland, approved in March 2021 as the first Indigenous Secretary of the Interior, has long advocated for teams to change such mascots. European Americans have had a history of playing Indian that dates back to the colonial period. In the 19th century, fraternal organizations such as the Tamai societies in the Improved Order of Red Men adopted the words and material culture of Native Americans in part to establish an Aboriginal identity, while ignoring the dispossession and conquest of indigenous peoples. This practice spread to youth groups, such as the Boy Scouts of America and many summer camps. University students in the late 19th and early 20th centuries adopted Indian names and symbols for their sports teams. as traditional Native American life was imagined by European Americans. Professional team nicknames had similar origins. In professional baseball, the team that is now the Atlanta Braves was founded as the Boston Red Stockings in 1871, becoming the Boston Braves in 1912. Their owner, James Gaffney, was a member of New York City's political machine, Tammany Hall. It was nominally formed to honor Tamanend, a chief of the Lenape, then known as the Delaware. The team that moved to become the Washington Redskins in 1937 was originally also known as the Boston Braves. B.